It is championship week. Georgia has the chance to do the funniest thing ever, and Ohio State and Indiana are playing for the Heisman. We're talking conference championship predictions tonight. This is the Nitro College Football Show. I'm Burl.
I'm Street.
Like and subscribe if you love college football.
All right, man. So before we get into the championship week predictions here, I got two things I want to say. Number one, today is National Signing Day. Does anybody really care?
That's a great question.
National Signing Day used to be a big deal, and Georgia lost the number one quarterback in the country yesterday. And you know how much I really care? Not much.
Yeah.
It's crazy to say that. That's insane to say that.
It is literally turned into an annual tradition of Georgia losing the number one quarterback recruit in the country on the last day.
Yeah. This NIL thing has turned recruiting on its head. Like, you work so hard to get these kids and recruit these kids, and then they're dipping out on the last day and burning bridges, and they're putting up billboards for recruits signing. Did you hear about this? Tyler Atkinson, Texas has put up a billboard on 316 because he signed. I'm like, why? It's a joke. It's recruiting is still important, and Kirby will continue to do it, and the good teams will keep doing it. But if these players aren't starting, they're going to transfer in a couple years. So it just doesn't mean what it used to. So recruiting is still important. Don't get me wrong. And the teams that will continue to be successful will recruit, but you're going to supplement stuff in the portal. If you lose a player like Georgia lost Curtis, you know what we have now? $900,000 to go out and spend on a wide receiver, a transfer wide receiver who's going to win something for us next year. So
Cam Coleman or Nick Harbor,
or Nick Harbor's going pro. The kid from Michigan State, maybe, but somebody. But anyway, so that was my first thing. National Signing Day used to be awesome. Now, who cares? Number two, bro.
So I think it still means something to a certain degree, because teams have to, you still have to have a good base, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And recruiting out of high school is your base, but the really great teams supplement through the portal, and that's exactly what Georgia did this past season.
Right. What I'm saying is signing day doesn't mean anything. Recruiting still means something, getting kids to come, but signing day doesn't mean anything because kids flip all the time now just because of money or whatever. It used to be a thing.
I think it's the word commitment that doesn't mean anything.
You're right. It's just, commitment.
I was thinking about that today. I hate that they use the term committed to a team when you haven't signed anything at all.
Right. Well, especially now when they are agreeing in principle on money beforehand, and then they're backing out.
Yeah.
Like I said, everybody knows that Curtis was getting $900,000 next year. Like,
they should change the commitment label to agreement in principle.
Right. What do they do when you're buying a house and it hasn't closed yet? Under contract, but
under contract.
Right. You got to go to due diligence. Anyway, number two, this is conference championship week, and they have extended the deadline to change the playoff format for next year. So my question to you is this: is this the final year of conference championship games?
I don't think so. I think there's still going to be a conference championship game because that's money in people's pockets.
But do you think they change it? Do you think it becomes a play-in? If they change the playoff format and it goes to this AQ model, do you think that the conference championship no longer is the top teams, they're already in, and it becomes a play-in if they expand the playoffs? Because I think that's probably what's going to happen.
It's a good chance for that. I think the reason they extended it is because there's probably a big contingent in the decision-making body that wants to keep conference championships just because it is an extra week of revenue. But
the conferences want to keep it because they make money. But I mean, people were joking about it. Georgia and Alabama this week, there's nothing. They're not gaining much other than maybe getting a bye, but they have so much to lose. Both teams in this game. I mean, they're already banged up to hell. Like, what if they just said,
Yeah,
"No, we're not playing," or we're
yeah.
forfeiting? Like,
Well,
Kirby's not going to do that. Teams aren't going to do that because of pride. But if there's a game, they're going to play it. But you know,
yeah. Injury wise, it is a valid question to ask, but I don't think any football player goes into a game thinking they're going to get injured.
no, of course. I mean, Kirby said that last week. You get injured in
Exactly.
practice.
Yeah.
So,
You can
but
get
if
injured walking down the stairs.
right, if there's a game to play, they're obviously going to play. I don't know, man. I just feel like if they expand the playoffs another round, and this proves, and look at the trend of Texas, complaining about, look at our schedule and we're getting punished because we played Ohio State. Alabama started canceling games off their
I
conference schedule.
I think we're going to see a lot more teams cancel these out of conference games
Right. And if
because
that,
it is even though I do not believe that Texas deserves to be in the playoff, and I stand by that because they lost to a crappy Florida team.
right.
They had to go into overtime to come to beat a bad Mississippi State team. Then yes, they played well down the stretch, but
They lost by 25 points to Georgia 2 weeks ago.
yeah, they got blown out by Georgia. Yeah, it's great that they beat their rival, but that's also a rivalry game. So
Right. And it was
there's
at home. And
always a good chance that you have a chance to win that game. So
right.
at the end of the day, I understand their argument that yeah, if they didn't play Ohio State and didn't have that extra loss, more than likely they would be in the playoff conversation more realistically. But they decided to play Ohio State and they didn't, and then they had the bad losses. So
Yep.
that's my stance on Texas complaining about not being in. It's the
Yep.
same thing as Bama and South Carolina last year
Right.
complaining about
Right.
being in.
Well, that's the thing.
Now
Everybody's like,
now
"Oh,
we're
Pavia. Did you see Diego Pavia? Pandering to Trump to
yeah.
expand the playoffs." You know what happens if they expand the playoffs? Then teams are going to be arguing about the 16th and 17th seed. I mean, it's not
Exactly.
it's not going
I
to
can't
change.
remember what writer tweeted it, but it was if you expanded it to a hundred teams, then the 105th, 106th team are going to be complaining.
Right. So, anyway, like I said, I just conference championship games are on their death knell to me. They're worth a lot of money,
Yeah,
but I just don't see them lasting.
yeah. I think the ultimate death knell will come when it's nothing but automatic qualifier or qualification games,
Right.
and rankings go away
Yeah.
from any consideration of playoffs, and I'm gonna be sad that day because that's the big thing about college football is like
Because
you can argue about the rankings every week.
that's the NFL. I mean, that's
It is.
you
It
don't
is.
you don't have division championship games. Conference championship games are just part of your playoff. So,
Yeah. Exactly.
all right. Well, let's get on to our conference championship uh, picks for this week.
Yeah.
And
Come on.
we're going to start out right here with the game that's most important to us. I know 1 versus 2 is a big deal. Stop complaining because College Game Day didn't go to Indiana versus Ohio State. They were at the Ohio State game last week. And oh, by the way, you've never complained about Big Noon Saturday not being in the SEC game. So just shut up. Like,
I
this is the
know. Like,
dumbest argument I've ever heard.
why aren't the Barstool guys down at a SEC game?
Yeah. So anyway, we've got number 3 Georgia taking on number 9 Alabama. Georgia is a 2.5-point favorite last time I checked, though. I think
It's gone
went
to
up.
1.5.
It's gone to 1.5. Okay,
Mhm.
so you know they played earlier this year. Alabama won by 3 points. We all know what happened in that game. Alabama jumped out. Georgia couldn't stop them on 3rd down. Second half, Georgia shut them down. Held them scoreless. Kirby decides to not take the tie, tries to run a play. We get tackled at the goal line. Taylor drops what would have been a wide open touchdown pass earlier in the game. Georgia loses a game that, by all metrics and everything, said it should have won. And now we go to play Alabama in the SEC Championship game. Everybody knows all the stats at this point. We've heard them ad nauseum. This is the 5th time they're meeting in the SEC Championship. Alabama's won the first 4. Georgia's 1-10 versus Alabama in the last 11 games. Kirby can't get over the hump. DeBoer owns us. All that jazz. We know. We know all the bad juju is there.
We know. It's true. You can't deny it.
Right.
And we had this same conversation after Georgia lost earlier in the year to Bama.
Yeah. The difference is I used to feel like, okay, we're gonna play Bama and we're just gonna lose because something weird's gonna happen. You know what now? If we lose this game on Saturday, we just lost a football game. Bama's really talented. We're really talented. I'm over this mystique of the Bama, and it's not because Georgia's winning. They're not, and they haven't beat them. So yeah, that's great. You're kicking our ass on the scoreboard or whatever. But the mystique is not there. It's not Saban anymore. It's just two teams playing on the field, and so things happen, and one team wins a game. Um, but both of these teams are kind of facing similar situations now. Alabama has more to gain by winning this game because potentially, if they lose and lose bad, they could potentially be out of the playoff. If they win, they're going to bolt from number 9 probably up into the top 4 and get a bye. So they have more to gain than Georgia really does in this situation. They lose, even if they're in the playoff, they're on the road in that playoff game. Both of these teams are beat to hell. I mean, Georgia has
Tons of
six.
injuries.
Georgia's
Tons
got
of
6
injuries.
guys out. In addition, we got the news today, Drew Bobo is officially out. Bo Walker is out because he got into a car accident and broke his jaw. So that's not good. We've already been a little banged up at the running back position.
And for the
Um,
record, it wasn't his fault.
yeah, yeah, it
This was
wasn't
not
his
your typical Georgia player driving stupid
right.
incident.
I think he was a passenger actually in the car. Um, But on the flip side, Alabama is banged up like hell too. LT Overton, their massive defensive lineman is out. And then they're most likely, they were listed as questionable, but everything I've read, Jam Miller, their running back, and Josh Cuevas, their tight end, who has been kind of the security blanket, for Ty Simpson, is out. So these teams are both just beat to hell going in this game.
Yeah, it makes me think that in this game it's could be pretty low scoring. Points are going to come at a premium, and not necessarily because we're going to see just ridiculous defensive play, but Georgia's so banged up on the offense that Georgia's going to struggle to score points
Yeah.
until they figure out the center situation.
Yeah.
And that's just the truth. I mean, we saw it last week. Georgia was running the ball at will the whole game, and as soon as Bobo goes out, the offensive line can't do what they normally do. And someone pointed out something that was real. It made a lot of sense. So we already have 2 true freshmen on the offensive line, and they've come a long way since the beginning of the year. And once Bobo left the game, we saw their play decline in the game. And the reason for that is Bobo is that leader on the offensive line, making all the calls, doing all the communication, getting everybody in the right protections. So now you replace him with another true freshman, you're going to see some
Maybe.
drop off across the line.
I don't now. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be Tolliver. There was some rumors that they might have somebody else flop in there, but either way, you're going to have that drop off. A lot of it's been written about the connection between Gunnar Stockton and the Bobo family anyway. That they've been friends their whole lives and all that stuff. And you know, Gunnar originally committed to South Carolina because Bobo was there as the OC. So that's another connection that they've always had.
Maybe that was the reason why Gunner, had a down week.
Yeah, it absolutely could be because remember that Bobo didn't play the week before against Charlotte either because he had a cut on his
Exactly.
hand too.
Yeah.
So Bobo was banged up before. Now it was an injury that he played through when they played Texas, but he was probably missing some reps in practice too, which could have impacted it. Um, so yeah, the interesting thing about this game though is like I said, both sides are banged up, but the one thing you can look at that if you want to put some eggs on Georgia's side is that these two teams have gone in significantly different directions since when they played early in the year. Earlier in the year, Bama was hitting its stride. They had that crappy game against Florida State, but then they got hot and they rattled off all those wins against ranked teams. Their offense was humming. Ty Simpson was humming. Over the last 6 games, they haven't been. They haven't been able to run the football, which has been a problem all year. But Ty Simpson's numbers have significantly fallen off as well. Georgia early in the year was struggling on defense, especially in the passing game, and especially on third down. Georgia has gotten stronger and stronger each week. Now, people said both teams kind of had disappointing games last week. Offensively, Georgia did, but defensively, they did not. Georgia Tech was a top 10 offense in the country that Georgia held to half of its average output. They held Canes King, who just won the ACC Offensive Player of the Year, well below all of his averages. The Georgia
Yeah.
defense has gotten better and better. The
It
guys. Oh, go ahead.
it absolutely has. I mean, we've talked about this several times since the last 3 drives of the Ole Miss game. Georgia's defense has been playing like the Georgia defense we're used to seeing.
Right.
And I expect that to continue. And when you look at the first meeting of Georgia Bama, Georgia was getting no pass rush, no heat on Ty Simpson whatsoever, not
Yep.
even close. And also, Ty Simpson was playing out of his mind too. So it was it was a combination of things that went right for Bama there, and it was a game that Georgia still should have won. Um, and so each week they've gotten better, and their havoc rate has increased to above 20% the last few games, which is a huge reason why the defense is starting to look like the defense you expect.
Right. And the other thing is in that game, the first game, Alabama, they took one shot down the field the whole game, and Ryan Williams dropped it. All of their passes were short passes. They ran a lot of stuff to Cuevas. They had some short stuff. They didn't take shots down the field. They couldn't run the football, and so a lot of those short passes were really extensions of the run game, I think. Um, Georgia's gotten better at defending passes down the field, and so I don't think that's going to be. I don't think that's going to be much of an option for Alabama in this game either. And they haven't been able to run the football, and if they're missing their starting running back and they're missing their starting tight end, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for Alabama with their trends. Their offense has not been playing as well. Georgia's defense is playing better. It's going to be hard to score points. Um, so all that being said, Burrow, what do you think? What do you think happens in this game?
I think that Bama's going to continue to struggle with the run, and it's going to be all on Ty Simpson and those receivers to provide all of the offense. And that does give them a chance, because as well as Georgia's played down the stretch, there's still some vulnerability in the secondary. And that's not necessarily saying that they're playing, bad, or, we're going to get torched that way. But that's always been the best way to get at Georgia, is to take the deep shots, because Georgia plays a lot of man, and you get a lot of one-on-one situations. And Bama has 2 of the best receivers in the country, and that gives them a shot. When it comes to Georgia's offense versus Bama's defense, if Drew Bobo was healthy, I could see this being a huge rushing game for Frazier and Bowens. It still might be, but the likelihood of that goes down. So with that in mind, and the fact that Bama has owned this series, as we said last time, next time Georgia plays Alabama, I'm going to pick Alabama until Georgia proves me otherwise. I want Georgia to win, but I think Bama's gonna win. I don't know that I don't think it'll be a blowout, because I think our defense is really good. But it could be, a 17-20 game or lower.
Yeah. So I'm kind of the same opinion. I think Georgia is the better football team right now at this point. Georgia rushed for over 200 yards in the first game. I think they'll be able to run the ball fairly well again, especially with Overton out. The Bama secondary is pretty good. I think with Drew Bobo out of the game, that will once again impact Stockton and the pressure and the time he has to throw. And like I said, Alabama has more to play for in this game. They could potentially be out if they don't win, even if they lose, but they're in the playoff, they're going to be on the road. So they have more to play for. And like you said, and I said it before, I'm not going to pick us again. I'm not going to pick us to beat Alabama until we do it. So I'm going to go with Alabama 27, Georgia 24. Close game. Both teams, look pretty good overall, but I think, that won't hurt Georgia too much. Worst they drop is 5, maybe 6, and Bama jumps up and gets the bye, and maybe we see them down the road.
It would be sweet revenge though if Georgia wins this game and prevents Bama from going to the playoff.
Yes, it would. Because they've done it to us at least twice.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. So absolutely. I would love to see that. If you're watching with us live and you haven't subscribed yet, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe buttons down at the bottom right hand of your screen. We love talking college football. We talk college football every week, all throughout the year. So like this video, hit the subscribe button, keep up with what we got going on.
Yep. All right, next we've got the Big Ten Championship. It's a number 1 versus number 2 matchup. You don't see those too much outside of, national championship games. You got number 2 Indiana, 12-0 versus number 1 Ohio State. Ohio State walks into this game at 4-0. Bro, what you think about the Big Ten Championship?
So this has been an interesting game to think about because you do have number 1 versus number 2, and they're very dominant teams. So if this was 3 years ago, this game would be absolutely enormous. I mean, it would have playoff ramifications, national championship ramifications. But now with the 12-team playoff, both these teams are going to get first-round byes no matter what. I mean, one of the teams would have to literally fall off a cliff to...
Basically, the winner's going to be 1 and the loser's going to be 3. I mean,
exactly.
Almost guaranteed. Yeah.
So it outsider looking in, there's some doubts that it's going to be a very competitive game, but I've talked to several Ohio State fans just to kind of get their opinion of like where they feel this game's at. And it gave me some hope that this is going to be a really fun game to watch because, I said in the opening, this game will probably determine the Heisman Trophy winner. If it's not Diego Pavia, which it is very well could not be. But whoever wins this game, that quarterback is going to be your Heisman more than likely. So that's something to play for. Indiana, they have never won the Big Ten. Or if they have, I have no recollection or have seen it at all. So they have a lot to play for. And, Cignetti is high on that. He wants to get that done. On the Ohio State side, you would think, okay, they're in the playoff. They're all about the national championship. But this group of seniors has never won the Big Ten championship.
Right.
So this is their chance to do that and send their seniors off with the completed resume.
So they have won the Big Ten championship twice. In 1945, they went 9-0-1, and they included a tie with Northwestern. And then in 1967, they went 9-2.
So both times we were at war with people.
Yeah. So here's my thoughts on this game. This is another one I think earlier in the year I called it a stat game. This is a stat game because the statistical matchup between these two teams is absolutely ridiculous. Ohio State is the number 1 scoring defense. Indiana is the number 2 scoring defense. Ohio State is the number 13 scoring offense. Indiana is the number 2 scoring offense. Both crazy defenses. crazy offensive. Ohio State is ridiculous all across the board. They're 1 or 2 in every major defensive category. They just haven't blown people out quite at the level that Indiana has, but Ohio State's had a tougher schedule a little bit. They both had easier schedules. So this is a game that, like you said, if one team's quarterback shines in this game, they're going to win the Heisman because of the defensive competition on the other side of the field. Now, no one has put points on Ohio State all year long. They're letting 7.5 points a game. But Indiana, like I said, they are the number 2 scoring defense in the country. They're a few points higher. The difference is when Indiana has played teams that have better talent than them, because nobody on their schedule has better talent than Ohio State. I think they even had better talent than Texas. But Indiana has played teams that had better talent than they did. When they did, those 2 teams, which was Penn State and Oregon, both of those schools scored 20 plus on them. But they're the only schools all year to do it. Nobody scored 20 plus on Ohio State all year. So I think the difference in this game is the fact that Ohio State has a more talented roster. And even though both these teams are fantastic defensively, I think offense is going to be harder to come by. I think these 2 teams are just really good defensively. I think Ohio State is going to score just a little bit more on a day when defense rules. These are crazy high-scoring teams. They're not going to be in this game. So
I agree. I agree with that 100%. I think it's going to be very score-wise. It'll be similar to Texas, Ohio State.
So for my pick, I'm going to go with Ohio State to win. Give me Ohio State 23, Indiana 21.
Man, we are very close on this one. I'm going Ohio State 24-20.
Right there, man.
Yeah, I think the Buckeyes pull it out. They send their seniors off happy with their trifecta, and it gives them a big head going into the playoffs, and they lose in their first game. No, I'm not saying that. But yeah, give me the Buckeyes. It's going to be a really fun game to watch. So after everything that I was explaining, it's going to be a really fun game.
Should be.
You have the great offenses against great defenses. It really doesn't get much better than what we're potentially going to see on Saturday with this game.
Right.
All right. Big 12 championship. So this one actually has some stakes.
It does. Because if BYU loses, they're out. No matter what. If Texas Tech loses, they're probably out as well. Now this is like Georgia Alabama. This is another rematch. Unlike Georgia Alabama, the first game was not close. Texas Tech strangled BYU in that first game, and they are BYU's only loss on the season. Texas Tech did drop a game to Arizona State, but that was a game when their quarterback was out. So when I'm looking over, BYU has recovered from that loss and won the remainder of the game. It's been playing pretty well on offense. So if I throw out the first game, let's just say that Texas Tech had their day, and I look for what else can I look about these teams? How can I compare them? Well, I look at a common opponent. Last week, to close the season out, Texas Tech played West Virginia. They beat West Virginia 49-0 last week. West Virginia has been a little bit better in the second half of the year. They haven't won 10 games, but they've been playing better. When BYU played West Virginia, they jumped out to a 14-0 lead in the first quarter. From that point on, the game was 24-24. West Virginia was able to come back even though they were getting their tail kicked and hung with them. And that just said a little bit to me that, you know what, this Texas Tech team, when they get a lead, they strangle you. BYU is good enough to get a lead, but they can't strangle you like this Texas Tech team has continued to do to people.
Yeah, I don't see this game really being close. That the Texas Tech defense is insane in terms of numbers. Number 1 rushing defense, number 6 total yards, 27th passing, and you run that up against BYU, who's 23rd in the country rushing. So that's a huge gap between 23rd and first.
Right.
Passing yards, BYU is very average when it comes to passing. They're
Right.
averaging 219 and a half yards a game.
Yeah,
That's
they're
good for
very
78th in the country, which is literally like middle of the road.
right. They're a very, very run-driven team with LJ Moore and Bear Bachmeier. They're running the football a lot. That's what they're driven to do. You're dead on
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And being 23rd in rushing is really good. But when you're going against the number 1 rushing defense, who's only giving up a nice 69 yards a game, it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
Tough sledding on that. So, who you got?
I got Texas Tech winning the game 34-20 and eliminating BYU from the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm with you on Texas Tech. I think it's going to be uglier than that. I think Texas Tech is in the 30s, 34, 38 or something, and I think BYU struggles to get to 17.
Yeah. We got some comments in the chat there. Bama will be in no matter what the score. Probably, most likely, unless it is a total blowout and they get like players injured, because the committee will do stupid stuff. So most likely, yes, Bama would be in no matter what the score. But if it's a blowout and there's injuries or things like that, I could see maybe them not making it. But most likely, yes, they are in.
Yeah, and Bama by 30, probably.
Probably. We both picked Bama to win, so I mean, I don't know what else you want from us.
That just goes to show how unbiased we are.
Exactly.
We try to be fair. Yeah, all right. If you love college football, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Talk college football with us. Let us know what you think in the comments. Who do you have? Who do you think we just totally missed on? What do you think is going to happen this weekend? But most importantly, hit that subscribe button.
Yeah. So we got another question. Do y'all see Texas making it in the college football playoff? No, we don't. We'll talk more about the scenarios, but I don't see them anyway them getting bumped up, especially with the rankings that came out. Also factoring in that they lost to Florida and they had to go to overtime against Mississippi State. I mean, they talked about the college football playoff committee mentioned that last night. So yeah, I know they've got 3 really good wins, but I just don't see a way with what's been released and what we already know and the teams that are competing. I just don't see a way that they get into the playoff.
Yeah, and just for the simple fact that the committee values losses more than wins.
Even though they're not supposed to. That's what they're doing, so don't kill the messenger. It's just it's what we're seeing.
Yeah, they value losses more than wins, and they pick and choose when head-to-head matters.
Right.
All right, let's talk some ACC Championship. This is like the great weird one.
Yeah, so Duke is in this championship game at 7-5. Honestly, if they win, I don't think they make the playoff. Even though Manny Diaz is on TV saying, yes, the ACC will get a team in. I think if Duke does win, that's the only scenario that you could see Miami actually get in the playoffs, and we can talk about that later. But me personally, I mean, I don't think either of these teams should be making the playoff because I don't think they're very good. Duke has lost. It's played 3 games against ranked teams, and they've lost. Duke is an offensive football team that doesn't play very good defense. Virginia is more of a defensive team that doesn't blow you away with offense. Duke spent a ton of money to get Daria Mensah. He's done great. He's got 3,400 yards passing and 28 touchdowns and only 4 picks. That's awesome, but they don't play very good defense. They lost to their 3 best opponents that they played. And like I said, Virginia is an interesting cause because they get into this game because they only had 1 loss in conference, but they lost to NC State, who was also in the conference as an out-of-conference game. So I don't think these are great teams. I think Virginia is a little bit better overall. Um, they did play earlier in the year, and Virginia beat them then. Um, Duke scored 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter to make it a close game, but up until that point, it was like a shutout. Virginia was kinda kicking their tail. Uh, so I'm gonna take Virginia to win this game 35-31, high scoring.
35-31. Yeah, just looking at some of the rankings of the offenses and defenses, Duke's defense is really, really bad. I mean, really bad. Total defense, they're 112th. Passing defense, they're 131st.
Like I said, they like to throw the ball, but they don't play they don't play pass defense.
Yeah. The defense is like, good luck, offense.
Which is funny because Manny Diaz is known as like a defensive coach, right? He was a good
Yeah.
defensive coach at Miami.
It's crazy. Yeah. And then on the reverse, Virginia's defense is okay. You know,
Right.
they're not like top ranked by any measure, but they're in the at least upper third of college football.
Yeah.
So I'm pulling for a Duke win just because I want to see craziness. I want to see how weird this playoff could get
Burrow wants to
with
see James Madison and either Tulane or North Texas in the playoff.
yeah. I want to see the reason that either Miami or Bama doesn't get in is
Is
because
James Madison.
two G5 teams got automatic bids.
That'd be funny. Hey, they'll be redoing that playoff structure real fast.
Oh yeah, they're like, okay, we don't need an extension. Let's do it now.
Yeah.
So that being said, I'm gonna go. I'm screw it. I'm going Duke.
All right.
Give me Duke. I picked Duke to win the ACC a few weeks ago. I'm sticking with it.
So that's the 4 major conference championships. Now we do have 2 of the G5 conference championships that do mention a little bit of analysis because they are potentially impactful to the college football playoff. So the first one is the American Conference Championship. We've got number 24 Texas, 2.5-point favorite against number 22 Tulane. In both of these games, these G5 games, what's the common denominator? The favorites' coaches are leaving their programs. They've been hired away. I think in all 3 cases, North Texas, Tulane, and James Madison, their coaches are staying in coaching through this game. But that's a huge distraction, right? Just in and of itself. North Texas scores a ton of points. Tulane is a good offensive football team too. But you know what? When looking at this game, I want to make a pick that I think is funny. Why do I think it's funny? And this person who's in the comments asking about Texas, you may not appreciate this, but I think it's funny that if North Texas wins this game and Texas Tech wins this game, that you're going to have 3 teams from the state of Texas make the playoffs. None of them are named Texas, and none of them started the year number 1.
That would be pretty funny for
And
everybody that's not a Texas fan.
And what's even funnier is if SMU hadn't screwed around with its food last week and lost, you could have had 4 teams from Texas making the playoffs and none of them named Texas.
Yep. But to answer your questions in the chat, do we see Texas making the CFP? No. I do think that they should be ranked higher than Vanderbilt. I mean,
Yeah, I agree with that.
They have much better wins. Plus, they beat them.
Right.
I mean,
And who do we have winning the national championship? I don't know that yet.
stay tuned. Watch next week.
Yeah. We got to see how these teams play in the playoffs, at least in the first round. Because last year, as soon as you saw Ohio State play that first round, you're like, oh boy, like you knew. So,
yeah, I mean, Ohio State has to be the favorite. Like if we're picking odds, like I would put money for Ohio State.
I would say that they're the favorite even if they lose to Indiana this week.
Agreed. Because we've seen what they have done when they lost at the end of the season.
Yeah.
And they have the best player in college football.
Indeed.
And I'm not talking about Julian Sayin.
No, no, we're talking about Jeremiah Smith.
Jeremiah
We've said that
Smith.
all year.
Yeah,
That hasn't
yeah.
changed. The other game of interest is the Sunbelt Championship game. We've got Troy taking on James Madison. James Madison is a 23.5-point favorite in this game. We know what James Madison is. They're basically Indiana Junior. They were where Signetti was before he went to Indiana. Some of his assistants, some of those guys there are his players. They've rolled through people all year long, but their schedule is just absolute trash. I think it was in the 100s in strength of schedule, by far the lowest of any team in consideration for playoffs.
So you're saying that they followed the Signetti tradition?
Yeah, they follow the Signetti tradition in the G5.
Seriously? I mean,
Yeah. I mean, look at it. They haven't played a team that's ranked in the AP top 25 all year. So
that's by design, man. It's by design.
yeah. So what are my thoughts on this game? I think they're going to try to do everything they can to impress the committee to try to, say we're better than North Texas and Tulane, but both North Texas and Tulane were ranked higher than them in the rankings that came out on Tuesday. I don't see a way that they can jump those two teams because those two teams have good records and they're playing each other and they're both ranked. So both the winner of that American championship game is going to pick up a ranked win. And James Madison is not. They're playing Troy. So I think they'll score as much as they can. Give me James Madison 45, Troy 13.
Yeah, I think James Madison runs away with this, and I could see James Madison, North Texas being the two highest ranked G5 teams after this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and especially if Duke wins, now that's where James Madison.
That's what I'm hoping for. I want to see it. I want to see it
because, like I said, even if Duke wins, Duke will have one win over an AP ranked team, and James Madison will still have 0.
So let's see if we have a question. How good of a quarterback do y'all think Julian Sayin is without the quality O-line?
I think he'd still be really good. I mean, he was number 1, number 2 quarterback in the high school coming out of or in the country coming out of high school. I think he's a very talented thrower of the football. Yes, in his first year as a starter, he has had the advantage of having an offensive line that has played really well. But Ohio State has been really good this year, but the one area where they have not been as good as they were last year was in the running game. He has fantastic receivers, so that helps too. But I still think he would be a very solid player. Keep in mind, he's a first-year starter. So his numbers are crazy for a first-year starter, and we've talked about it ad nauseum that players get better when they play more football. It's just true. You don't see that many contender teams having young quarterbacks anymore. So
yeah, and if you've watched any of Ohio State games this year, his accuracy is not a fluke. It's not like he's throwing quick screens that are 3 yards or 3 yards behind the line all the time. He's making deep passes, hitting receivers in stride, and it's a beautiful thing to watch. I mean
he's at 79% completion percentage on the year.
That's insane.
And that's pretty dang close to like the NCAA record, I think, for completion percentage.
Yeah.
Like I don't think he's going to break it because I think it was like 81 and he was up there above it, but that's still insane, especially like I said, for a first-year starter.
Now, if you give him Georgia's receiving core from last year, then Julian Sayin's transferring to Miami.
As a quarterback. You're right.
I love it. Okay, Conference USA. Kennesaw State versus Jacksonville State. Another Georgia versus Alabama.
Actually, so I just looked it up. Right now, Julian Sayin is the NCAA all-time leader in pass completion percentage in a single season for a minimum of 875 pass attempts. The previous record holder was Bo Nix. So currently he is. So if I think he's a good quarterback, even if the line wasn't as good, yeah, that's pretty damn good. Yeah. So Conference USA, Kennesaw State, just up the road here from me. Impressive team because they just moved up from SCS like 2 years ago and are in a position to win a conference championship. So that being said, I'm going with the local team. Give me Kennesaw State 31, Jacksonville State 28.
Yeah, I think this is the one Georgia-Alabama matchup where Georgia comes out on top this week. And I'm picking Kennesaw State just because.
Yep.
All right, Mountain West.
Mountain West Conference, you've got UNLV taking on Boise State. Boise State favored by 4 points. What you got here, bro?
I think UNLV pulls this out.
Yeah.
Team of destiny.
Yeah, two things I've got to say about this. Boise State has not been the same team they were last year because they don't have Ashton Genty, who should have won the Heisman. We said it lots. And then number two, I've always said this: Dan Mullen can coach. He is a good football coach. He just sucks at recruiting. So when he went to UNLV, a team last year that early in the year before their quarterback quit mid-season last year, they were kind of the favorite to be a playoff team last year out of the G5. You knew he was going to a pretty good position. So I think UNLV is set up to win this game. I'm going to take UNLV 41, Boise State 34. What you got?
Yeah, I got UNLV as well. In this new world of NIL and not having to really recruit, but you can hire a GM to do all that for you. Dan Mullen has new life in college football.
I'm surprised he hasn't gotten more mention for other jobs. I mean, I know this was his first year at UNLV, but I'm surprised his name hasn't come up more.
Dan Mullen to Penn State?
That would not be a bad hire.
That's actually not a bad
idea.
At
all, but I wouldn't want to take that job now after they signed like 2 recruits today.
Yeah, that's rough. You go, they were at number 2, number 3 in the country.
Number 2 in the country, like 9 weeks ago.
Gosh, what an epic collapse.
Yeah. All right, our last pick is the Mid-American Conference, some good old MACtion. We got Western Michigan 2.5-point favorite over Miami of Ohio. What you got in this game, bro?
Okay, so I love me some MACtion. Western Michigan has a long history of putting out great players. If you remember years ago, who was the guy that was like Baby Tebow?
That wasn't that was Central Michigan. That was Dan Lefevre at Central Michigan.
Oh, way off. Okay, so never mind. They suck.
Only thing you know, Western Michigan was row the boat, man.
Yeah. Okay. Forget it. I said any of that. Okay. I'm an idiot. Whatever. So Miami of Ohio is going to dominate this game. And the main reason is my father-in-law, Jeff Torrance, is an alumni of the Miami of Ohio. So give me Ohio.
So I have a cousin who went to Miami of Ohio. And fun fact, I was born at Miami Valley Hospital in Dayton, Ohio. So for that reason, and my last name is Streetenberger, and their most famous alumni is Roethlisberger, I'm going with Miami of Ohio 27, Western Michigan 20.
Burger.
Yep.
The only guy
who, if I visually wanted to picture how my last name would look on an NFL jersey, I never had an idea until we had Roethlisberger. And that's like, oh, it would look like that, you know?
Well, hey, maybe one day they'll create a sandwich named after you, the Streetenberger.
They might.
What would your sandwich be?
I have no clue.
I mean, I picture it as like some kind of barbecue burger with a McRib in it.
Delicious.
That might be terrible.
McRib. Shout out the McRib. Shout out Bryce Carlson if you're watching this.
There you go.
All right, we got a couple more before we go. We got a couple more questions in the chat. How do y'all feel about Lane Kiffin switching schools with Ole Miss going to the college football playoff? Well, I think I said it all year that I thought when this started happening that I thought he was going to go to LSU. Now, how do I feel about him leaving Ole Miss, I think it's pretty crappy because you built that team. They had 7 10-win seasons in their history in 120 years, and then he did it 4 out of 5 years. And you've got this great team that you built and all that. I think he had a chance to stay in Oxford, continue to winning, and be the god of Ole Miss football, replacing Eli and Archie Manning. But he chose not to. So I think that's a selfish decision, but he's an ambitious guy, and he's always has been.
Yeah. I felt like he really did struggle with the decision, and ultimately it came down to most likely a conversation with him and Nick Saban. And I
So
think old Saint Nick said, "Man, LSU's the place to be."
yeah.
So, from a career standpoint, it's a great move. I mean, I hate it. I think the timing of it sucks. That's not necessarily Lane Kiffin's fault, but the college football calendar and how it's set up, it's absolutely stupid because Lane Kiffin's not the only one
Right.
that has pulled this. I mean, there's going to be several teams in the playoff without their head coach.
Or with their coach, but their coach is leaving. We talked about
Yeah.
it with the G5 coach, at least one of the G5 coaches for sure. So
Yes. So I don't like the situation, but I understand it. It does suck for Ole Miss. I really do hate it for Ole Miss because really it's the best season they've ever had.
yeah. The other question was, how do we feel about the coach replacing Lane? So Pete Golding, I mean, he is another Nick Saban disciple. He was with Lane at Alabama. He was actually the DC at Alabama, I think, right after Kirby. So he's part of that Nick Saban tree. Now, I think people at Alabama soured on him because he was not Kirby. He did not have quite as good a defense as Kirby, even though that was a time when Alabama was really ratcheting up their offense, maybe due to Lane Kiffin. I think it was a wise decision to not only keep it in house, but to actually give him the job. I don't know if it'll work out long term, but I think for giving them a chance to win in the playoffs this year, that was the best thing they could have done.
Yeah, I mean, short term, I think it's going to be fine. I was surprised that they just named him the head, like the coach,
Yeah.
like not having the interim tag or anything like that. Um,
It felt very similar to what happened when Brian Kelly left Notre Dame. And
yeah,
in Notre Dame immediately said, Marcus Freeman, you're the head coach. And when that happened, a lot of the assistants stayed, and it kept a lot of players from transferring, and kept people at Notre Dame. And I think you're going to see similar effects at Ole Miss. If they wanted to hang on to some of their players, I think this is going to help them from losing guys in the portal in the offseason, particularly.
yeah, and originally, I was thinking that okay, Lane Kiffin goes to LSU, he's probably going to bring a bunch of players from Ole Miss there. I don't think that's going to be the case based off what we've seen on social media with some of
Right.
their players.
No,
Just
they seem pissed.
they're very pissed off about
Yeah.
it. And how funny is it that Charlie Weiss actually gets to be the offensive coordinator after getting on the plane and
Yeah.
getting cussed out by the Ole Miss fans?
Yeah. Well, Lane helped work that out, but I didn't hear about Joe Cox going back, so he's with Lane all the way. So,
Yeah, yeah.
all right. Well, that's our picks. Bro, you got any final thoughts on what is the last week before the real postseason?
I mean, regular season is done. It's been a awesome year.
Except for
Um,
one game.
except for one game. But for the Nitro show, it's been an awesome year. We've had a lot of fun, a lot of great shows. We've got a lot of new subscribers and viewers, which we absolutely appreciate. And if you're watching right now, hit that subscribe button, join in the fun. Let us know what you think about what we're talking about, what's going on in the college football world, and we'll hit you back up. We're keeping track of all that stuff. Um, so it's just been a really fun year. Kind of sad. It's coming to an end because we only get 12 of these guaranteed.
Yeah.
So looking forward to the SEC Championship. I'm hoping for the best, planning for the worst, and then we'll sit back and watch these playoffs and see how that goes.
Yeah. I guess my final thought is the rankings that came out last night kind of revealed pretty much where they're headed with the playoffs. At this point, having Notre Dame ahead of Miami, unless Duke wins and they feel bad about not having an ACC team in the field, I think we're pretty much set, except for who gets the ACC bid and the G5, even if Alabama loses. So I think the field is pretty much set. It's the 10 we've got plus Virginia and maybe Tulane, North Texas, or James Madison. So
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. Like I said earlier, the committee, they pick and choose when head-to-head matters.
yeah,
It's like the show Whose Line Is It Anyway? Where everything's made up and the points don't matter.
well, all right, man. Well, to all you fans out there, enjoy this last week of crazy conference championships. And until next time, I'm Street.
I'm Burl.
Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.